welcome to Sip and Stretch. My name is Alila. So maybe you are looking into doing yoga, however, you're a bit intimidated to just walk into a studio, and I completely understand that feeling. So what I want to do is go through a couple of warrior poses that are staples through Vinyasa, Hatha yoga, and many of the practices that are out there. So that way at least you have a little bit of a foundation. I will emphasize though, go to a yoga studio so that way you have an instructor that can check your alignment, because oftentimes we get into a pose and we're like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be, and you don't realize that, oh, maybe your knee is collapsing in, or you're hinging forward so you're putting pressure on your lower back, or doing things that are not in good alignment, and then it becomes muscle memory. So by going to a studio, somebody is there keeping an eye on you in order to help correct you, so that way you can set yourself up and understand, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel, and be able to move forward from there, keeping those points in mind the next time you come and take a class or go back into that pose. So let's go ahead and kick it off with Warrior 2. So for Warrior 2, I want you to come onto your mat right away. I've got my left leg forward, so follow what I'm doing, and you want your front toes to be pointed directly forward. Now, your front knee is going to be over your ankle. Some of you are really open in your hips. The tendency is to kind of press your knee way past the ankle. You don't want to do that. Pull it over so that your joints are stacked one on top of the other here. With that being said, if you have any issues with your knee and it feels better to straighten it a bit, that's okay. As long as you are not dumping your knee in. Instead, make sure that your knee is aligned with your big toe here. As you're here, begin to try and rotate your femur, so your thigh open a little bit. So by pressing your knee open, engaging into your left glute, so the glute of the leg that's pointed forward, you can have that external rotation happening and having a little bit of an opening through your inner thigh, your adductor. As you're here, engage into your back quadricep as well. And check your alignment. So your front heel should be in one straight line to the arch of your back foot. Your back foot is parallel to the back of your mat. So as you're here, feel how much your legs are actually working. Your glutes are working, your front quadricep is definitely working in order to keep that bend in your front knee. And you're having a tremendous amount of range of motion here in order to keep your legs open like this. As you're here, notice what's happening in your pelvis. Are you dumping into your lower back? Tuck your tailbone under a little bit, draw your navel in. It's not going to be a significant shift, but you should feel nice and strong through your lower back. Then, stack your shoulders directly over your pelvis. A lot of people tend to lean forward. Draw your back shoulder back so that it's aligned, and then engage into your triceps, gaze over your front hand, and squeeze your triceps tight to the bone. Soften your shoulders down and squeeze your shoulder blades together behind you. So you should feel strong in your upper back here. Lift the crown of your head as well. One straight line from your tailbone going up to the crown of your head. As you gaze over your front hand, really feel all the strength that's happening through your entire body. This is Virabhadrasana 2. Next, Virabhadrasana 1. You'll take your back foot and bring it a little bit forward, and you want your back foot to be out 30 degrees. With that being said, your heels are now in one straight line. So that way, you can press your right hip, if your left leg is pointed forward a bit. So you want your hip bones to be aligned. If that's not possible, maybe bring your back foot out just a little bit further so that you can bring your hip bones parallel to the front of your mat, okay? So once your hip bones are aligned there, even place your hands on your hips. Sometimes it feels like, yeah, they're aligned. No, until you place your hands on your hips, that's when you really feel it. Same rules apply. Stack your front knee directly over your ankle. Make sure that your back quadricep is engaged. You're going to feel a stretch happening in your hip flexor now because of the way that you've rotated your pelvis, and you're driving your back heel down into your mat. Once you're here, bring your shoulders back over your pelvis, navel in, and reach your arms overhead. Soften your shoulders down and back. So it's easier for a lot of people to keep their hands apart like this. If you're going to hold this posture because you have tightness in your shoulders, or there's anything else that prevents you from bringing your hands together overhead, rotate your wrists so that you have external rotation happening in your shoulder here, so that your pinky fingers are closest to one another. And then up at the heels of your palms. Maybe lift your lower ribs a little higher so that way you find more length through your lower back. So you have a slight extension going into your lower back here in order to gaze up. This is why I set up Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2, then Warrior 1, and now we're going to go into Warrior 3 because Warrior 3 naturally progresses from Warrior 1. Warrior 3 is a balancing pose, so you want to root down into your front foot. Once you feel like you've got stability there, come off of your back foot and lift your heel high so that way you can bring one straight line of energy from your fingertips out your back heel, gazing down at your mat. Bring your hands to your hips so that way you can align your hips once again. You want your hip bones to be parallel to the floor. So lower that right hip down, bringing it in line with your left. A lot of people have that tendency of opening up through their hips. Instead, allow your hips to be aligned. Once you feel like they are, begin to straighten into your standing leg. Engage your back quadricep, so your right quadricep. Flex your right foot here, and then extend your arm back out overhead. Keeping that gaze on your mat, feel what's happening in your lower back as well. Your lower back has to work in order to keep your back leg lifted. This is Virabhadrasana 3. If you have trouble with this, know that you can modify it as well. So from here, you can always take blocks and use those in order to have props available to help you balance. So if you need that, take your blocks, place them on either side of your mat with your front foot pointed forward, root down into it, and then come off of your back foot, land your hands on the blocks, then you can play around here. Once you have your balance, bring your hands to your hips, get your back hip down. Once you feel like your hip bones are parallel, continue to lift your back heel, bring your hands back down to your blocks, and try to keep your weight off of the blocks. The more that you practice this, the easier it'll become to balance on your standing leg. With that, you can also use a wall as a prop. So if you're close enough to a wall, same rules apply. Going from Virabhadrasana 1, rooting down through your front leg, launch off of it, maybe bring your hands to the wall. Once you feel like you're stable there, same rules apply. Bring your hands to your hips, level them to the ground, bring your arms back overhead. Play around with not having to balance against the wall. Over time, it will become easier. So that, friends, is Warrior 2, 1, and 3. Thanks so much for joining me. Okay, now that I've introduced some of the warrior poses to you, let's go back over them, and then I'll start going into some of the transitions that can happen off of Warrior 1 and Warrior 2, just to bring in a few more poses for you to have in your utility belt of yoga. So let's get back into Warrior 2. Your front toes are pointed forward, back foot is parallel to the back of your mat, front heel is aligned to the arch of your back foot, arms extended out long. So with your shoulders stacked over your pelvis, belly up and in, take it to an extended side angle. So from here, hinge forward, and then lower your left hand down toward the ground, right fingertips up toward the ceiling. Create one straight line from your right hand to your left. Continue to draw your navel in, draw the crown of your head 45 degrees up. Here, if you're having trouble with this, you can always take a block, place it behind your front leg to place your hand down onto, and then play around with trying to take your weight off of that block. That'll force your obliques, the muscles at the sides of your waist, to engage, and over time it'll become easier. If you feel like you've got that opening, you can even lower that block by placing it on its side, and then continue to go into extended side angle here. The other variation from Warrior 2 is to straighten your front leg, hinge forward, exhale, triangle pose. Lower your left hand down toward the ground, reach your right fingertips up toward the ceiling. Continue to engage your back leg, so don't let that back knee bend. Pull your right shoulder back in space, gaze up at your right thumb. Same rules apply. You can take a block and place it behind your front leg in order to place your hand down onto for more stability and balance. From here, draw your navel in, inhale, rise up. Point both sets of toes out toward the side of your mat. Allow your heels to come out a little bit, toes in, lift your chest, lift the crown of your head, find extension through your spine, exhale, forward fold. So standing, separate leg stretching, or prasarita as it's also known. Place your hands up underneath your shoulders, tip your weight forward into the balls of your feet. Lift your knees. So you want your quadriceps to engage in order to lengthen into your hamstrings. So the focal point of this is really to open up the backside of your body. You can even wiggle your hips a little bit side to side, find a stretch going into your inner thighs, and then start to lower your belly toward your thighs. Notice if your hips are dropping back, you want them stacked over your ankles. So a lot of us have difficulty with that because it's more comfortable to drop the hips back. Instead, by pressing your hips forward, you're going to feel more unstable. Hence why you want your hands underneath your shoulders. Draw your belly in to support your lower back. Bring your hands to your hips, or you can bring your arms out long for more of a challenge. And then rise back up with a neutral spine. And that is a few transitions you could do off of Warrior 2. Let's get back into Warrior 1. So for Warrior 1, again, you want your back foot out 30 degrees. Your heels are aligned to one another. Your back foot might be a little bit closer in than it was in Warrior 2. Keep your front knee directly over your ankle, arms up overhead, whether apart or together. Then from here, take a deep breath in as you lift your chest. Exhale, hinge forward at your hips to lower your forehead down toward your knee. So you can place blocks up underneath your hands if that feels more comfortable for you. Ultimately, you want to tuck your chin into your chest, finding that forehead to knee connection. It's not accessible for everybody. You can even place a block between your forehead and your knee in order to find that connection. If you are super flexible, you can straighten into your front leg, keeping that forehead to knee connection the entire time. It's a huge opening through your front hamstring, the back of your thigh. Continue to draw your navel in, keeping your chin to your chest, opening up the back of your neck, helping to regulate your thyroid. And then bring your hands either together or apart overhead. Draw your navel in, always to support your lower back. Inhale, rise, back up. Lift your back heel. Ensure that your hip bones are still aligned with one another. You're going to feel even a deeper stretch happening in your hip flexor here by rotating that back heel up toward the ceiling. Continue to tuck your tailbone under, draw your navel in. That further accentuates the stretch happening in your hip flexor. Arms up overhead, crescent, gaze is forward. From here, you can take it into a runner's lunge as well. Bring your hands down onto your mat. Toe heel your left foot out toward the top corner of your mat. Continue to extend through your back leg by engaging that back thigh muscle. If you want, you can stay here on your palms. If you're really tight in your hips, you can take blocks once again, place them up underneath your hands so you're not going quite as deep. If you feel really comfortable here and you want to take it further, if you have a sensitive knee, you can always roll your mat over to put more cushion underneath that knee. Lower your back knee down, then you can come down to your elbows to go even deeper. If anything feels off, always come out of a pose. It's no longer yoga if you're potentially creating pain in your body. And then from your runner's lunge, plant your hands back down into your mat, tuck your back toes under, and then sweep your left foot back to meet your right. High plank. So, stack your shoulders directly over your wrists. Press into the pads of your fingers to take some of the stress off of your wrists. Your index fingers are pointed forward. Your thumb forms a J with your index finger. Press the mat away so you dome out into your upper back. A lot of people dump their shoulders back and they create a valley between their shoulder blades. No. Engage into your pecs by pressing the mat away. So the muscles right in your chest should be nice and tight here as you're pressing the mat away from you. Draw your belly in, engage your quadriceps, and stack your heels directly over the ball mount of your foot. Some of you might want to take your knees here as well by untucking your toes, coming down onto your knees, slowly building up your upper body strength so that over time you'll be able to hold that high plank position. that gives you a handful of things to work with as you continue on your journey